Hello, we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia. My name is John Brink, and I'm pleased to have a special guest today. His name is Derick Johnson, and he is a fellow that is a U.S. Army veteran turned his career into, after the Army, turned it into becoming a life coach, especially relating to trauma issues. He helps people break the old patterns so they can thrive and survive. Derick, welcome to us. Where are you located, Derick?
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. I'm actually located in Panama City, Panama. So I'm way down here. And right now it is nighttime.
Nighttime. What time at nights?
7:05 p.m.
7:05 p.m. So I'm located here in Prince George, British Columbia, in British Columbia, Canada. So we are you familiar with the province of British Columbia?
Yes. I haven't been, but I'm familiar with it. One of my mentors, him and his team, they're up in that way.
Yeah. So we are, it's a big province, British Columbia. Obviously, you know Vancouver. We are about 500 miles north of Vancouver. And then we are exactly in the center of the province, 500 miles east of Prince Rupert, or the Pacific coast, and 500 miles west of Alberta.
Nice.
So beautiful day here today. It's turning to be fall. It's the time is exactly 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and heading into the fall, and then probably winter by the time October, November comes.
Oh yeah, it looks beautiful out there, out of the window.
Yeah, it is. It's a beautiful location. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Derick, and your past.
Yeah, for sure. Great question. So my name is Derick Johnson. I'm a Army brat. Essentially, my dad was Army, and in America, we call ourselves Army brats. So my dad was U.S. Army for 25 years, and my mother, she was German, and she was a kindergarten teacher for 40 plus years. So growing up with a German mother, African-American father, they're very focused, very strict, very disciplined, and successful within what they do. So that mentality was instilled in me, which inspired me to get into sports, into military, and things of that nature. So on the positive side, had that intention, had that intense focus from family, just seeing my parents awake at 4 and 5 a.m. with that intense focus and professionalism. So on the flip side, the careers were amazing. The success was there, but both of my parents, they went through their own traumas as kids and throughout their teenage years. So alcoholism on both sides of my family was very common. Alcoholism, drug abuse, things of that nature. So throughout my teenage years, I was the brunt end of receiving that anger and aggression, but it would only happen at night. So that is what inspired me to work on myself. It all started with my body. I grew up as a skinny kid that was always bullied at home and at school. So in middle school at the age of 11 and 12, I said enough is enough. And then I dove deep into fitness. I picked up every men's health magazine, bodybuilding, all that. I learned about the body, and then I learned about the mind. And then by the age of 15, I became a trainer to help others, my teachers, my classmates, because I fell in love to see what the body and mind are capable of. And that basically kickstarted everything. So the discipline at home, the trauma at home, to then harness the body, focus on the mind, to then move forward. So that was my teenage years. And then from there, I got into the Army and then segued into coaching after that. But it was always a core passion of mine to help show people the power within themselves to improve and get out of any dark situation.
Interesting. So were you the only sibling, or did you have other
I was
brothers?
the youngest.
You were the youngest?
I was the youngest. I had 2 older sisters.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and were you born then in Germany or here in the U.S.?
I was born in the U.S. and then so I would say a few months after I was born, we moved to Germany. So we lived in Deutschland for a few years. and then moved back to America. But I was born in the United States.
Right. So for me, just to give you a little bit of background on myself,
Okay.
I was born in 1940, so I'm nearly 83. During the Second World War, I was born November the 1st. The Second World War started in Holland when it got, I was born in Holland, the extreme northeastern part of Holland. You likely know it from your time that you were in Germany, is that, so we were living about 20 minutes from the border with Germany. So we were invaded by the Blitzkrieg in April of 1940. My dad was drafted into the Dutch army in April of 1940, and then the last they heard from him was then that he was caught in Rotterdam during the bombing of Rotterdam. Rotterdam, as you likely know, is a big city. The Germans bombed the whole downtown area, and thousands of people died, that lived there. For my mom was on her own during the war, had 3 kids. I was the youngest, my sister 1 year older, my brother 2 years older. And it was a difficult period, especially during, I remember still from the time that I was 3.5 years old, and remembering bombers overhead that were bombing Germany then, hundreds of bombers, and usually flew right over the direction of northern Holland because they were trying to avoid the flak, and the more they were over water, the safer it was from a bombing route into Germany. So I still remember that part from the time that I was 3.5, 4 years old. And the sound of 100 bombers is something that I will never forget it, what it was like. And you will never hear it now, really, because the same will not happen again. I spent 2 years in the Dutch Air Force. I was drafted in the Air Force when I was 18. But coming back to the war, is that the most difficult period was likely 2004, 2044, 2045, or 1944, 1945. They called it the Hunger Winter, and the coldest winter on record. And a lot of people, young people in particular, young kids and older people that were vulnerable, died because of hunger and cold. And I remember that well. As kids, we would go in the mornings when we got up. We would go with gunny sacks into the railroad yard to find anything edible and burnable. And the reason that we won, because the Germans wouldn't shoot us, but they would boot us one, and then we would come back the following day regardless. But I still remember that period, Derick, from the cold. I still can feel that from then. And the hunger is something that never leaves you. And then the other part was anxiety. As a result of that, and adding to that is we were liberated by the Canadians. The Canadian Army liberated most of Holland, so I still remember the Canadians coming in to our hometown, April the 12th, 1945, and it made such an impression on me that I always knew I would go to Canada, the land of my heroes. Obviously, the liberation was difficult. We saw far too many things that we should not have seen, bodies and dead bodies, and that it was pretty rough in that area. The Canadian Army and the other armies pushed the Germans through western part of Holland, through the top back into towards Germany, where they then, finally capitulated the war, and but it was a difficult time for them, and then,
Oh yeah.
as you already know, that even for people like me that were there, but was always part of my life is PTSD and the inner
Yes.
child. And in fact, the inner child, I really didn't know what it was, but in the latter part of my life, when we had counsel in regards to some other issues between our family, it was suggested I have counsel in regards to the inner child. Very dramatic, actually, and but very emotional. But I started to appreciate the importance of getting counseling, especially
Yes.
where it relates to trauma, and so to step a little bit further, the affected me likely as well. A lot of people don't realize that after a difficult period of where you are exposed, young people in particular, to trauma, that it will stay with you for a long time, and
Exactly.
and even then, after the war years were over, and my dad was still alive, came back after 5 years with his family, things were never quite the same again, because and obviously life was different. To get back to a sense of normal, a lot of people think in a sense that, oh, the war is over, so therefore everything is back to normal. No, it likely will take generations before it becomes any sense of normality again. And the same we
Exactly.
will see in the wars that we see today in the Ukraine and in other places like that. The damage to the people, young people in particular, in families, is such that it will take generations before it becomes any sense of normality again. But I found from that experience that in combination with, schooling for me was difficult. I failed grade 3, and I failed grade 7 three times, and then I kind of felt I had failed, and then
Makes sense.
created the dream that someday I wanted to go to Canada, and then obviously the land of my heroes, and then I had been involved in the lumber industry because my dad worked there, and I wanted to build my own lumber mill. And then my
Nice.
education was not, I had no diploma, so that in Holland it works this way. If you want to get a career and you want to maybe get married, build a house, or buy a house, then you have to have a good job. And if you want a good job, the first thing they ask is, okay, where are your diplomas? Well, if you have no
Exactly.
diplomas, that becomes a... So I felt I had to start all over again, new. And I did that coming to Canada when I was 24 years old. The reason that I'm
Wow.
telling you this is that as I looked at your biography and I saw some of the interviews that you did or the podcast that you did, is that trauma is also something that I know from experience, as you have, and you will tell us
Yes.
more about that, I'm sure, is that I felt I had an obligation to start working with young people and to become more vocal about it. And I did that especially in the latter part of my life. And and the other part I should share with you that you might find interesting. I I've, I'm also an author, and I wrote so far 3 books. We're working on 2 other books actually, but the one that I have
Nice.
is Against All Odds.
Against all odds.
Yeah, and it's a, 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 it's a not so much about hurrah, hurrah, John, how well he did, but more about all the challenges and how to, in spite of it all, still remain positive and you know, create the attitude of that working with others and sharing with others about the challenges that they have is very important.
Yes,
So the other part
exactly.
that I discovered when I was 57 years old, I walked into a store here in Prince George, and I found a book, and I opened the book, and the book's title was Driven to Distraction, and it was a book about ADHD. I'd never heard of ADHD, and ADHD. You're familiar with ADHD?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So and I felt I had to talk about that, and it took me a long time before there was stigma attached to it. So it took me quite a number of years before I
Sure.
became vocal about it. I wrote a book about it, and
That's awesome.
I spoke about ADHD Unlocked, and I speak about it a lot of times now. And the frequency of occurrence among young people in particular that are affected by it, you know, has been difficult for a lot of people because they have difficulty in schooling where they are sitting in a setting for 4 years and obviously attention to issues that don't necessarily interest them all that much is one of the challenges.
Oh yeah.
You know, so this is it was very important for me to talk about it and to write about it. The frequency of occurrence was thought to be around 8%. It probably is closer to 20% of the population.
Oh yeah.
And
It's very common in the United States as well. I saw that when we moved from Germany to the United States, I saw the shift of a lot of my friends growing up had it or were diagnosed with it. And in Germany, didn't even know what that was and never even heard of it. So it's interesting how different countries and cultures, it's way more common or it almost doesn't exist.
yeah, or they don't know it exists, right? So I believe
Yeah.
that from my experience that has been from around the world, it is pretty well the same all over for the same reason. You know, that I feel that with some of the other trauma, maybe PTSD or the inner child, or through war or circumstances that, you know, like in your life, were that through counseling and creating situations that will deal with those underlying issues, may that
Yes.
be sports, it may be whatever, it will be helpful. ADHD is not one of those. It's either you have it or you don't, I believe. And I'm not a doctor,
Yes.
obviously, but, you know, so, but yeah, so that's a little bit of my background. So
I appreciate you sharing that.
the trauma part of it is very important in terms of, okay, so the history that I had, not unsimilar to yours, is that my dad, when he came back, was affected by PTSD and became, as a result, probably an alcoholic as well, a closet
Yes.
alcoholic. You know, he was civil about it, you know, not in the partying type, but it was very much part of our life,
Okay.
and affected things negatively, you know.
Yeah, that's something that was very common with my father as well, is being deployed so many times, seeing war, seeing death, all the other things that he would see. I noticed that that would happen as well as the drinking. And on my mother's side, uh, being German, she suffered a lot of trauma in regards to her father being an alcoholic and a drug abuser. So a lot of violence happened from both parents, from their parents. So
Right.
then a lot of that trickled down. And I feel like some generations, they don't get the help that they need, or they don't realize that they're receiving what the previous generation had. So grandpa,
Correct.
excuse me, grandpa did this, the next father does that, then they do it to the kids, where I believe that myself and yourself, we were able to see the vision or the discernment to say, after us, things are going to change. The
Right.
alcoholism is not going to be here, the physical abuse, the
Right.
mental, the emotional, all those things, it has to change with somebody. So seeing that somebody can have that power has always inspired me to see like family trees when it shifted with this individual versus 3 to 5 generations beforehand where it was just repeated process. So I just applaud you for what you do as well, because it's rare to meet people that don't continue the cycle of previous generations.
Yeah, so very much so. And then, having been exposed to all of that, and then the other one that I was not aware of is the ADHD, and that kind of explained to me, at least as it related to me as an ADHD person, as to why I had difficulty being successful academically, but it was simply a question of the effect of ADHD. But the other part about it, which I believe was very important, is that once I found out about it, that I found it to be what I call a superpower. It allows
Yes.
me to do a lot more things all at the same time because of ADHD.
Oh yeah, I've noticed that as well, is that a lot of diagnosis could be a gift when people can harness that energy and they can get so much done. Or a lot of those people, once they realize the power that they have, they become geniuses, where beforehand they probably didn't think they were too smart, but then from there they can start to utilize it to their advantage in school, in business, careers, or even like as a teenager, maybe they're playing puzzles or board games and they just remember everything. It's interesting. So I had friends that were like that, where there was a shift and they're like, wait, we think you're a genius. You don't have to study in school, don't even have to try. Or they have photographic memory. I had a lot of guys in sports in the military that had photographic memory, and they were perfect to have on your team because you show them something for 2 seconds and they could draw it out, that they remember it for years. And then that's
Exactly.
the go-to person. And it was always interested me, like what the brain is capable of after trauma.
Yeah, yeah, that absolutely so. And a lot of people that are successful, I've had several of them, that I podcast last week, at least one, that indicated, yes, he was ADHD as well. So that it happens over and over again. And, it is indeed, it gives you the ability that is a gift more so than a liability. And it is only
Yes,
now
I
that
agree.
people start to recognize that. So tell us a bit more about what you're doing now, then, Derek, and in
Yes.
terms of. So you were 10 years in the army, then you
Yes.
retired to retire, and then your career became helping others.
Yes. So before the army, so at the age of 15, I got certified as a personal trainer. So fitness was my outlet as that teenager and child going through that home trauma. I knew that I had to release. So I was the quiet, calm kid that was just always laid back. But the only reason I was like that is because I fell in love with the mental high of pushing my body and my mind past its thresholds. So I got inspired to help other people do that physically. And then in the US Army, I did two things. One was satellite communications. So I've always loved technology, I've always loved tech. And on the other side, I had the passion for fitness and helping people. So I was also the master fitness trainer. So what that individual would do is help soldiers get into the best shape physically and mentally to get them mission ready. So some were in great shape. Others would come back from deployments from injuries and gain weight. I would help them physically and mentally. So that way they met the standards and were always mission ready. So with the personal training before the army and then also helping soldiers in the army, I knew that my heart was destined to help the general public overcome deeper things than just fitness. And so after the army, that's when I went deep into life coaching. And what inspired me to get into life coaching was I would see clients that I work with months and years later, and they would lose the progress that they made, and one side of me said, hey, he or she went backwards or they didn't stick to the plan. But that was the immature version. The mature version said, I did not give him or her the mental tools that they needed to sustain this or to get rid of the traumas which started to creep back into their life. So being able to work with all these different people, I was able to identify patterns in people. So I feel like my gift from the traumas was being able to have discernment, some would call it consciousness, to be able to read a person or a room and then identify the patterns. Because I first did it with myself, then I would identify the patterns of my family and my friends, and I would say, okay, when this happens, my father does this. When that happens, my mother does this. The same thing with myself and others. So I feel like that was a gift that I was able to use. And then I could flow from there to help others in a deep way. So that was the journey of it. It started as fitness, it went into the military, and then from there it got into coaching on a deeper level. So nowadays what I currently do is two things. I help people identify their patterns that aren't helping them so that way they can thrive and not just feel like they're surviving. So what I mean by that is an individual that's a CEO that makes millions of dollars, but he's had 3 divorces. That's one example. Another example could be somebody that is in great physical shape, but mentally they lack confidence because they have limiting beliefs from their past. Another one could be somebody feels like they're doing well in business, financially, and career, but they feel unfulfilled. So all these things are very common. And that is what I help people with the most nowadays, is to penetrate that trauma or that pain to get rid of it so they can thrive more than just be good in 1 or 2 things. And so they feel like they have control of all aspects of their life. But essentially looking back in hindsight is that child who was going through the screaming nights, 300 plus days a year, glass being thrown, being beaten, being yelled at, all this stuff, didn't realize that I was harnessing the energy of being able to stay calm in traumatic moments. So when that happened in the military, in sports, personal life later on, or even nowadays, I'm able to just be calmer in said situations. So going back to it, relating to you, is I feel like the gift was discernment, 1, being able to read people and situations, and 2, having the ability to stay calm under pressure, where it's not a flight or run or freeze. It's always in fight, but calm and focused. So seeing that perspective has always interested me, but I feel like many people are not able to yet. They can, when they work on it, are able to perspective hop, as in hop out of the pain, look at your past version, be proud of current version, or hop to a future version to see what decision should my current version make in said scenario. But things along these topics have always driven me. And I noticed that myself, yourself included, and others that have been through very traumatic things, seen drug addicts, seen dead bodies, seen all these different things, once we do the inner work on ourselves, along with a combination of faith in whatever higher powers or being somebody believes in, that is the quote unquote magic for us to help other people. Because I feel like that's the only reason we're here, is we can heal ourselves to then help heal others because of our experiences.
I agree with you, Derick. I went through the same as you did, the trauma. And then I feel even now, most people would say, I seldom get stressed out. I know how to deal with it. I'm at peace with myself more than anything. All of that I have reconciled from the past. And then the other part that was important for me is how to share that with others. I had challenges because I felt I had been a failure academically in school. It took me till I came to Canada here, and even then already I was successful, as in my book. Everybody said, oh my God, you're so successful, and this and that and all the other things. I said, I didn't feel that way. And and then the other part to communicate to me was difficult, other than with maybe 2 or 3 people in my company. But outside of that, it became difficult. By pure coincidence, somebody dragged me physically, virtually, to a Toastmasters meeting. Are you familiar with Toastmasters?
Yes.
Yeah.
I went to a few in college.
and so I went to the first meeting, And I said, I make sure that nobody asks me any questions because I don't want to be part of it. And so halfway
Yeah.
through the meeting, somebody said, "Hey, John, tell us about yourself." And I said, "Oh my God," so, and then I said, "I'll never go back there." Well, I did go back there the following week, and I stayed there for 10 years. That
Awesome.
changed my life because I became a distinguished Toastmaster. That is the highest level. Probably Toastmasters actively, primarily in North America, have probably 450,000 to 500,000 members active in different Toastmaster clubs in North America alone. And probably,
Yes.
I would say 5 to 10 million people have at some point participated, either with a few meetings like you did or others, certain steps. But to become a distinguished Toastmaster and stay there for that long, 10 years, there is probably less than 1% of Toastmasters that stay in there that long. I did, and it changed my life. And then the other parts about it that changed my life is that when I became aware of the fact that I had ADHD, and
Yes.
and then now I felt I could effectively start communicating about it. So I'm nearly 83 now. So, by the time that I reconciled with myself that ADHD is a superpower, it's not a liability, I started to talk about it more about 10 years ago, and in particular started writing books about it. This book was written about 5 years ago, very popular actually, audio as well, around the world. And then I felt I had to be more vocal about it, speak about it, so I became a professional speaker. I do a lot of that in not only in Canada, but around North America in particular, more and more all
Awesome.
the time. And then the other part is I write my books about it. So the other book that I just finished and came out July the 19th is this one, Finding Your
Finding your
Passion,
passion, living the dream.
Living the Dream. And some interesting statistics came out of the States here a couple of weeks ago, actually, which I already had seen before. But they say that 70% of the population do not like their jobs, and 75% of them are looking for other jobs. And I'm not surprised about that. And that's
Yeah,
why
me
it
neither.
it is so important. And then the question would be, how about you, John? Do you like your job? Are you living the dream? I am. I do. And the other part is that I should share with you, when I came here to Canada and was going to build my mill, I wanted to start with nothing. I had a suitcase, 2 sets of clothes, and 3 books. And then I counted my money when I came off the bus here, the Greyhound bus in Prince George. I had $25.47. But the thing that you will like is what I did have is I had attitude, avoid the negative. I always look at the glass is half full. I'm always looking at things positive. Find your passion. Find the things that you like to do. And if you don't like them, change them or add to it passion of some sort that stimulates you to get up in the morning and enjoy the day.
Oh, yes.
And work ethic, but follows this success. My employees make that for
love
me,
that.
actually. And
I love that. I was going to ask you about that when I saw, because the camera is panning over.
Yeah.
I was like, I wonder what the story is.
that's the story. And then the other part of it is interesting about it. I'm writing another book that will come out here next June. It is saying, living young, dying old. And what I'm saying is that it's not about the years, it's about quality of life. It's staying fit,
Exactly.
diet, understanding your body and being active in it. And then I want to live until I'm 120. That's basically the idea. So I do what you do, is I'm careful with my diet. I got a trigger that in 2008 I nearly died. So I had diverticulitis that became very
Oh, wow.
serious. That nearly killed me actually. And then I knew I had to take all of this much more serious. So that was 15 years ago. Since that time, I started going to the gym in earnest, not just making the commitment at the end of the year and then you go for
Yeah.
2 weeks and then you don't go anymore. So I became active, had a trainer, go to train about between 7 and 10 hours a week. And then after about 6 or 7 years, somebody said to me, have you ever thought about competing? I said, me? And and then I said, well, why not? And so I started then to get ready for competition. Already by then, that was 2017, 2018. And so I was already 78 years old. And, so I competed here in northern British Columbia, bodybuilding and physique. In my group, 55 and older. They could have been my kids actually, but came in second on bodybuilding, third in physique. Then provincially came in third in physique, second in bodybuilding. Then qualified for the nationals and the Arnold's bodybuilding and physique. But then COVID,
awesome.
and then COVID came, and now I'm back again training for competing again 2024 again to the nationals and to the Arnold's.
Nice. That's awesome. I did 3 physique shows back in college where I was living in Florida at the time. So it's interesting that we relate with that. So seeing what the body, seeing what the mind is capable of.
Yeah, so what I got from you in particular when I looked at your biography and I looked at some of the podcasts that you did is that trauma affected your life in a very real way because although you were able to somehow deal with it, a lot of people would not have. And obviously there was an effect afterwards, and that then made you do the things that you're doing now in terms of especially those people that are struggling with either past trauma, may that be even at an older age, those that were involved in the war years or in seeing too many things they should not have seen or trauma
Yes.
like that, and still trying to deal with it and not having recognized it necessarily or reconciled it. And the key is to, and that's what I'm trying to do in the same way as you are, and maybe in different ways, but in the same objectives, is finding peace in who you are.
Yes.
Be at peace with you. And whoever that may be, it does not mean that you have to be a successful business person or career person, but just in terms of find that passion and be at peace as to who you are. And then, and that's the most important part, I believe.
Yes, I totally agree with you because that individual can be more present, where nowadays people are less likely present in the moment, in the conversation with their family, present while they're working, present doing anything, is that they're always either in the past or doing the what if scenarios of the future. What if this happens? And if that happens, I have to do this. And then like the stress and anxiety, pressure, drama, all this goes up in their head, or the other individual could just be stuck in the past. It's sad to see, but the good thing is that you can guide people to stop worrying about this, stop worrying about that, and just be here in the moment and say, what can you control right now? What do you have the power to control in this very moment? And being able to bring people into the present where they can feel every emotion, whether it's excitement, whether it's the sweat after a workout, whether it's just allowing themselves to release emotions and just being there and being present. But being able to show people that it's okay to be present is such a game changer for many people because they're always in the past, in the future, or they're on these devices and just being distracted on every single app. So they're not present in the beginning. But yeah, bringing people to that present moment, just be proud of themselves with how far they come, even if they're not at stage 10, level 10, X amount of dollars or money in their account, whatever it is. If they can just say, I'm proud of what I've done to this point. Yes, there are things that I would like to improve. I'm very hyper aware and clear on what I want to improve, but I need to be proud of myself to see what all we've been through, what all we've overcome. And today I can control X, Y, and Z. Being intentional about that present moment and the present day that we're in, it's all about just winning the day. Today is Tuesday while we're recording this, is what can we do the rest of the day to feel like we won this particular day? And that mentality is so rare, but being able to help people get into that present moment to strictly focus on what can I do to win the day, they less likely start to live in the past or try to live in the future with these fabricated what if scenarios.
I agree, Derick. And so what I do is that I usually get up around 5:30 in the morning, and
Awesome.
I always make my bed. That must be partially military because
Oh yeah.
and I always do that. And then I always think I'm late, and I'm usually very busy because I love the things that I do. And and that does not mean that every day is a good day, but for me, most of every day is really a good day. And if there are challenges, we deal with those challenges. And but to feel at peace with yourself, who you are, and what you're doing
Yes.
is one of the most important things. And then I love to share, with others and talk to young people in particular. To me, is very important.
And that's powerful because real conversations are so rare. So I appreciate what you do for others and just being able to sit with people and having solid conversations about real topics where it's not just fluff. Because I was always told, even as a kid and as a teen, that I'm an old soul because I never wanted to just talk about just sports, what's happening in the media, all this. I was just like, I didn't care. I didn't care back then. I don't care nowadays, but
Right.
I've always cared to have real meaningful conversations because not having that from family was always like a driving force to me, where I would always watch people. I was the quiet kid in the corner that would just read the room and figure out people's patterns. And it always interests me, like how the mind works. And then the older I got, I realized that that was like a cheat code and a gift to be able to read that and to just be present with people in the moment. I like, in general, whether it's a client or a stranger in public, ask them questions that make them think. An example could be, what is your favorite thing about what you do? Any question that makes somebody go like this and make them think is going to bring
Yeah.
that person in the moment, because everybody else is just saying, hey, how's the weather where you are? Living the dream. Blah,
Yeah.
blah,
Yeah.
blah.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
this just
Exactly.
generic fluff talk.
Exactly.
If you can make people just start to think, it's amazing what happens, because after that conversation, they could be like, wow, he really has me thinking about my life and my goals. And like the rest of the day or the rest of the month, they might be thinking about that one conversation. So I always challenge people to have empowering, meaningful conversations with people, because you might make somebody's day, they might make your day, vice versa. But it's amazing where that social human connection is rare to have. So being able to give somebody that or to receive it is always good.
No, that's for sure. Did you get a copy of my book? Did Scott send you a copy of it?
No, I haven't gotten a copy. I would
So,
definitely love to read those.
okay, we'll send you copies of the books. You have to
I
just make
appreciate it.
sure that Scott has the right address.
Yeah, definitely.
So, what else comes to mind? So, you've been very active in podcasting.
Yes. So as in what comes to mind in regards to career?
Yeah, career and other things that you're doing, including podcasting. Let's talk about podcasting for a minute. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So my whole intent with podcasting, so I started this about three and a half months ago. That's when I got onto Podmatch, and is just having powerful conversations with people, because I have them every day with my clients, whether that's in person or via Zoom. But I knew that the life experiences just had to be pushed out there, because I've been on the receiving end of hearing a podcast, hearing an interview, watching an interview where I took one or two things from that conversation and I implemented in my life. So at this point, it's just been like I've experienced and seen so much good, bad, dark, evil, all this stuff. So I feel like now it's just being able to divulge and tell the world different things. And it's just interesting what happens after the fact, because getting that email, getting that message or that text saying, hey, I heard what you said on this. I needed that. I
Right.
went through this, or hey, I'm not crazy. You think the same way. And it's always interesting what
Exactly.
happens after the fact. So yeah, it's just been a passion to share my experiences after my career, trauma, helping people and so forth, and just make people think, give them a new perspective where that might be the perspective that they need.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I found too. Is that it's amazing how small the world really is. You know that initially we started very small around our area here, and it's at the same time very amazing how many people in our region, northern British Columbia, with world champions of different things,
Yes,
Olympians, and then people that have excelled in a number of different areas. And it has been delightful for me to be interacting with people from all different kinds of life. Today I'm talking to you about trauma, and relating to, but you very openly share with people that a lot of people would not talk about it, or would still
exactly.
carry it with them, where they need the ability to share it with mind like other people that went through the same thing, similar, and that hopefully
For
will
sure.
help them in terms of still reconciling that. And on the other hand,
Exactly.
to see opportunities, talking with individuals that have been immensely successful in other areas. So it opens up the world much wider and broader. And to me, that has been very, very interesting.
Exactly. And I like how you said that people are more connected than we think. The world is small, that we realize there's not that big of a difference between most people's upbringing, situations, traumas, because as humans, when we're in the moment of hell, of darkness, of trauma, of negativity, we feel like we're alone. Why me, God? Why me? Why is this happening? Why is this? But slowly, when we start to meet people that have been through something similar or worse or totally different, we still feel connected, even if we don't relate to the exact same thing. But it's always, it brings us more into a level of gratitude where we see, wow, he was able to withstand this. John saw this. Derick saw that. Michelle saw this. And it really brings people together where I agree with you when it comes to expressing ourselves. We feel calmer and we feel at peace. And I noticed that in regards to like an energy frequency, we're both very laid back and calm. And I feel
Exactly.
like many people on these topics, they get really riled up or emotional, but all
Right.
that is a sign and proof that they just need to work on it, because eventually they'll be able to speak about any of the darkest things that they went through and still be calm, because they no longer let that thing control them, whether it's family, war, abuse, physical, sexual, whatever it was. But it's always inspiring to meet people that can speak about those things. And also for the individual that is in that place, they see somebody that is calm and they're like, wait a minute. All I needed to see was proof of a gentleman, of a woman, of whoever that went through this thing and is now thriving and not just feeling like they're barely surviving or overcoming things.
Yeah, the other thing that I found, Derek, is that one of the most difficult period for my family, myself, has been the Second World War, and not only so much the actual war years, because I don't remember too many things other than towards the end. Obviously, seeing too much that we not should have seen, but then the
Yes.
families that were fractured from for many years thereafter, if not generations. And so what I usually do is the Rememberings Day here is November the 11th, and what I have been doing for the last 10 years, likely, is I speak to a number of schools where there are young people in particular about why the 2 minute silent, why is that so important, and what does it really mean, and to share with them how fortunate we are and how quickly everything can change, and
Oh,
that
yes.
and I believe that part is important. So I've been doing that. Usually speak to 3 or 4 different schools every year, and and I believe that is important to say, appreciate what we have. And for young people in particular, they don't always fully understand as to why it is so important to remember. And
Exactly.
and for us, the few that were still there, for them to still share that with them, is important.
For sure. Because at the end of the day, every human just wants to feel like they're heard and understood. Heard and understood. So being the child that's always told to shut up, don't speak when spoken to, and all that, that can form the way that somebody communicates or doesn't communicate with people at all. So when they meet somebody that does actually listen and is with them, it like wakes them up and they're like, wait, they're actually
Correct.
paying attention.
Yeah.
Because nowadays most people are doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm listening, and they're not even listening to anything.
No.
And it makes people not even want to talk. And they're like,
Exactly.
this is why I stay home, because nobody listens to me.
Yeah.
So being able to make somebody feel heard and understood has always been empowering to see, to feel, because we've all been in a low place where somebody in the grocery store just listened to us, or we listened to them, and we're like, wow, I needed this human interaction. And it's always interesting to see. But I always challenge people, what can you do to make somebody feel heard and feel understood?
Exactly.
Even if they have totally different lives, they can still feel connected and both feel empowered when they're like, wait, we have all these differences, but we have all these things that are similar. This is interesting.
And isn't that often the case, though, Derick, that, and as you likely do and as I do, talk to people from around the world, how similar we are, how the issues in a lot of cases are the same. And
Yes.
that, that being able to be at peace with yourself and being able to communicate about it, and that may help or give some people encouragement that their situation is not unique, and that as long as you keep working on it, come to peace with yourself and look at life positive, rather than always having to go back to those areas that were not resolved, is very,
Exactly.
very important.
For sure. To bounce off of that, one of the most empowering quotes that I heard, I was 11 years old when I heard this. My dad was playing Tony Robbins tapes, but the quote that stuck out the most at that time and to this day is, life is happening for you, not to you.
Exactly.
So if people can shift that perspective when they're like, it's happening for me, yes, it sucks. Yes, there's darkness. Yes, there's pain,
Sure.
trauma, and all that. But these are all cheat codes and gifts that can form a whole new path in life, which is just amazing to see. But it's rare for people to think that way. But if they can pause and just be in the moment and say, what can this thing teach me? It's
Yes.
very empowering, because they're like, wow, I can now teach other men. She can teach other women and children. And we're always learning from people that lived it. People that have
Exactly.
been through the experience, they're always the best teachers, because what better way to teach than, hey, here's my life. So let me show you. I'm not teaching you from a book or from a theory that somebody taught me. It's like,
No,
we lived through all this.
I
So,
lived it, right? You were there, right?
exactly.
So in closing, Derick, what else comes to mind before we...
Yeah. So what else comes to mind is, I just always challenge people, what can you do to become the man or woman that you would be proud of? And
Right.
how can you give him or her to other people? What can we do to become the men and women that we would be proud of? And how can we give him or her to other people? Because at the end of the day, that's all we're honestly here for. We can heal ourselves, we can heal others, and it doesn't have to be their career. They can just be the example. If you set
Exactly.
the example for the family, for people that are watching you, because somebody right now might be stressing, might be in a low state, but I guarantee you there's always going to be someone that looks up to them. It might be the little kid down the road that sees them walking by or jogging. It might be somebody in their family. It might be a stranger at work. But if they can just remind themselves that people depend on them, even if they don't have kids, somebody looks up to you. So what can you do to become that better person and to just radiate with good, vibrant energy? Because people are going to want to elevate. Some people, they won't like it, but the right people will start to elevate and come towards you. And the other people that want to stay low, they're going to have resistance. So just be aware of that.
Exactly. That sounds very good, Derick. It was my pleasure to have you on my podcast
I appreciate it.
and to share with you our lives and my life, and your life and my life together. And in a lot of areas, we have the same objectives and looking forward. Be communicating with others is very, very important, and I believe we do the same with our podcasting, either being guests or podcasters. Is very, very important for the others to listen to and to hopefully learn
Exactly.
from.
I appreciate you having me again. And thanks for being able to be open about these topics because it's rare, especially as men. We're always told to suck it up, don't talk about it,
Yeah.
man up,
Yeah.
hold it inside, just be aggressive. And sometimes we just need to talk and just be calm about it. That is real power.
I'll sign the books for you. We'll send them down to you.
Awesome. I really appreciate it. I look
all
forward to
three of
reading
them.
them.
Okay, Derek.
Perfect.
Thanks.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thanks again.
Take care.